The USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group is heading toward the Middle East. F-15s have been deployed to the region. Anti-missile batteries are in position. Trump has threatened very strong actions if Iran executes protesters. The White House says all options are on the table. But here's the connection most people are missing. 2,600 years ago, a prophet described a nation called Persia that would face internal collapse before being pulled into a war it didn't choose. Persia is Iran's ancient name. And right now, currency down over 90% in 5 years, protests reported in more than 100 cities across all 31 provinces, nationwide internet blackout on January 8th. The pattern matches what was written. The prophet used a specific phrase, hooks in the jaw, the image of forcing an animal that's resisting. What comes next in that prophecy? That was written down too. This isn't a routine patrol. Carrier groups don't move into the region without purpose. The Abraham Lincoln brings F-15 fighter jets, anti-missile defense systems, and gives the president multiple military options. Iran is watching every movement. But while everyone's focused on the carrier group, something else is happening. Something that started on January 4th, 2026, when Israel broke 46 years of silence. January 4th, 2026. Netanyahu's office releases footage from a cabinet meeting. In it, he does something Israel hasn't done in 46 years. He speaks directly to the Iranian people, not their government, not their military, the citizens themselves. He tells them their fight for freedom is just. He says they deserve better than 46 years of oppression. He tells them the world is watching. And this wasn't a private diplomatic cable. This was recorded, translated into Farsi, and broadcast internationally. Israel wanted every Iranian citizen to hear it. They wanted the regime to know they heard it. And they wanted the world to see a wedge being driven between the Islamic Republic and its own people. Why now? Israel has watched Iranian protests before and stayed silent. In 2009, the Green Movement put millions in the streets. Israel said nothing. In 2019, fuel protests turned deadly. Over 1,500 reportedly killed. Israel stayed quiet. In 2022, Mahsa Amini's death sparked nationwide demonstrations. Still, no public statement from Israel. So why break that silence now? Because this time is different. And Netanyahu's message landed in the middle of something far bigger. Because when he spoke those words, Iran was already collapsing. In late December 2025, Iran's currency collapses to historic lows. The rial has lost over 90% of its value in 5 years. But now it's in free fall. Bread prices double overnight. Fuel becomes unaffordable. Families that were barely surviving are now desperate. The protests start small. A few cities. Economic complaints. Within days, it spreads like wildfire. By early January 2026, over 100 cities report demonstrations. All 31 provinces are involved. This isn't scattered unrest. This is nationwide uprising. And the chants evolve. In some cities, protesters wave the old monarchist flag, the lion and sun emblem from before 1979. In others, they shout for the return of Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the last Shah. They're not asking for reform anymore. They're demanding the regime fall. Multiple ethnic groups are united. In Tehran, the people demand regime change. In Tabriz, ethnic Azeris rise up. In Kurdistan, Kurds demand autonomy. In Balochistan, the Baloch people join the fight. This has been described as the most serious discontent the Islamic Republic has faced since 1979. The regime's response? Overwhelming violence. Mass arrests sweep up thousands. The Revolutionary Guard uses live ammunition against protesters. Reports emerge of snipers in cities. Revolutionary Guard soldiers allegedly executing injured people in hospitals. Then there's the casualty question. Human rights activists estimate 3,000 to 4,000 killed. But intelligence sources and witnesses on the ground claim between 16,500 and 20,000 have been massacred. The regime controls information, so verification is impossible. Even conservative estimates show thousands dead. But this time, just the crackdowns aren't stopping the crowds. The violence isn't creating fear, it's creating rage. Why? Because the Iranian people have nothing left to lose. That's when the regime made a move that revealed just how terrified they really are. January 8th, 2026. 4 days after Netanyahu's speech, Iran shuts down the internet. Not in one city, not in one province, nationwide. Mobile data gone, social media blocked. The entire country went dark. When a government cuts the internet, they kill their own economy. Banking stops. Businesses freeze. The regime knows this cost. So why would they do it? Because they've lost control of the narrative. They can't stop videos from spreading. They can't prevent the world from seeing what's happening. They can't control what their own citizens are saying to each other. Egypt did this during the Arab Spring. We know how that ended. Airlines started canceling flights to Tehran. Diplomats quietly evacuated families. When a major regional power starts fracturing, it destabilizes everyone around it. Then Iran did something that connects to what was written 2,600 years ago. They issued a furious response to Netanyahu's statement, and they made a very specific accusation. Israel is orchestrating the protests. Foreign intelligence is funding the unrest. The Revolutionary Guard issued threats. Any external support for protesters would be met with severe consequences. If Iran falls, they're taking someone down with them. Now back to that carrier group. Trump has been escalating his threats. He's called for regime change. And he said Ayatollah Khamenei is a sick man who should stop killing people. The administration is backing the dissidents. When protests started, they issued a clear warning. Don't harm them. Don't execute them. The regime began arrests anyway. Then they started shooting people in the streets. Trump's response? For those who are killing the dissidents, we will be keeping a list and keeping track. Revolutionary Guard generals will be held accountable, even when the administration falls. This threat made generals personally liable. Iran's response? The president warned that any U.S. strike would provoke a harsh response. Any attack on the supreme leader would be full-scale war. But intelligence reports claim, though unverified, that some leaders may be positioning for exit strategies. So there are claims about Russia potentially offering asylum. There's also talk of special operations. A guest on a news program made extraordinary claims about a Venezuela operation involving technology that allegedly caused paralysis and equipment failure. These claims lack independent verification, but the implication is that similar capabilities could be used. A Middle East analyst offered a different view. He acknowledged the U.S. has capability to inflict damage, possibly even take out the supreme leader. But he cautioned, it's one thing to kill individuals from the air. It's much more complicated to bring down a regime from the air. So military options exist. The hardware is positioned. But there's something else happening that was written down 2,600 years before any of this started. A prophet named Ezekiel, writing around 600 BC, 2,600 years ago, described a massive coalition of nations coming against Israel in the latter days. In verse 5, he named Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them. Ezekiel didn't say Iran because Iran as a modern nation didn't exist yet. He said Persia. Persia is the ancient name for modern-day Iran. This isn't symbolic. Persia is Persia. Ezekiel 38 names the full alliance. Gog from the land of Magog, most scholars believe this refers to Russia. Meshech and Tubal, regions in modern-day Turkey. Persia, Iran. Kush, likely modern Sudan. Put, likely modern Libya. Now look at the current geopolitical landscape. Russia and Iran are already allied. Military cooperation, economic ties, shared interests in Syria. Turkey, despite being a NATO member, has drifted toward Russia and Iran. President Erdogan purchased Russian missile systems. The relationship with the West is strained. Sudan and Libya are both in chaos. Civil wars. Competing governments. The coalition Ezekiel described 2,600 years ago is geopolitically possible right now. But here's the critical detail. Ezekiel doesn't show Persia strong when this coalition forms. He shows Persia drawn into conflict. Ezekiel 38:4 says God will put hooks in the jaw of these nations and drag them into battle. That's not the language of a nation confidently marching to war. That's the language of a nation compelled. Hooks in the jaw. In the ancient world, that's how you controlled powerful animals. Bulls, lions. You couldn't force them by strength alone. You had to use leverage. So what kind of nation gets dragged into war? A stable one or a collapsing one? A stable Iran wouldn't need to be dragged anywhere. But a weak, desperate Iran, a nation facing internal collapse, a regime with nothing left to lose, that's a nation that could be compelled. Maybe it's a desperate attempt to unite a fractured population against a common enemy. Maybe it's pressure from allies like Russia. Or maybe it's exactly what Ezekiel described. A divine hook pulling nations into a confrontation written about thousands of years in advance. Jesus warned about signs to watch for. Matthew 24:7 says, "Nation will rise against nation." The Greek word is ethnos, ethnic groups. Jesus wasn't just talking about international wars. He was talking about nations fracturing from within before they collide from without. That's exactly what we're seeing in Iran. Not just Iran versus Israel. Iran versus itself. Ethnic Persians, an Azeris, Kurds, and Baloch all rising, a nation tearing itself apart. Luke 21 says nations will be in anguish and perplexity. The Greek meaning, trapped with no way out. Iran has no solutions, collapsing economy, furious population, international isolation, trapped. Ezekiel 38 says this coalition will come against Israel, like a cloud covering the land. Overwhelming force. But here's the hope. God doesn't let the invasion succeed. Ezekiel describes earthquakes, infighting among invading armies, rain, hailstones, fire, and sulfur from heaven. The invaders are destroyed, not by Israel's military, but by divine intervention. Ezekiel 39 says it will take 7 months to bury the dead. That's destruction on a scale the world has never seen. The purpose? Ezekiel 38:23. God will show his greatness and make himself known to many nations. Now, I need to be clear. I'm not setting dates. Matthew 24:36 says no one knows the day or hour. Anyone telling you they know exactly when is contradicting Scripture. But we are called to watch. Scripture said Persia would be part of a coalition against Israel in the latter days. Iran is currently weaker than it's been in decades, internally collapsing, externally aggressive. Israel is inserting itself into Iran's crisis. The nations are already aligned: Russia, Turkey, North Africa. Is this Ezekiel 38 unfolding? I can't say definitively. But we're closer than we've ever been. The carrier group is in the region. Trump is threatening action. Protests in all 31 provinces. Thousands dead. Internet blackout. A regime with no solutions. A population with nothing to lose. This is a nation with hooks in its jaw. Iran's regime can shut down the internet. They can arrest thousands. They can issue threats. But they can't stop what God already wrote. Ezekiel saw this 2,600 years ago. He saw Persia drawn into conflict. He saw the coalition gather. He saw God intervene. And he saw the whole world forced to acknowledge that the God of Israel is real, powerful, and in control. When you see Iran collapsing from within while threatening war from without, remember Ezekiel 38. Remember the hooks in the jaw, because what happens in the next 7 months after that invasion